I am just so excited for this video. You might hear some squeals of delight. You might see some tears of joy. You're definitely going to be hearing the words excited and thankful all throughout this video. And that is because this is really the most exciting video that I have filmed yet to date in my over 8.5 years here on YouTube. Why is that? Well, it's because I have been working on a project collaboration for the last almost year now, and I am finally able to tell you that this product is going to launch tomorrow, March 7th at 9 a.m. Eastern. Now, some of you have probably followed along my little hints that I've been giving you on Instagram and here on the community tab on YouTube. And so you'll know that this collaboration is a project I've been working on with Dalton. Now, I have done 2 little pink boxes. And so some of you said, is this another little pink box? No, it's not. But it is a product that some of you may have guessed, and this literally is a product that is my dream come true. Years and years ago, I always dreamed about one thing that I thought it would just be so fun to get to create, and I am so grateful to Dalton for helping me create and produce my very first eyeshadow palette. Now, before we get to the actual palette and the colors inside, just allow me a few little details and a little story time here. If you're impatient, you can fast forward, but please come back to this point. So first and foremost, I just want to extend a huge thank you to Dalton Beauty. Oh my goodness, I can't even tell you what an amazing company they are, and I have really fallen in love with their products, their formulations, and with the team themselves. I had the privilege of meeting Emily, Francesca, and Lee in December, and they are just genuine, hardworking ladies that really know their stuff. And so it was such an honor to be able to work alongside them and to present my ideas to them and them to just kind of pull everything together and create this palette that I am so proud and happy to have my name on. So thank you, ladies. Thank you, Dalton, Dr. Doris. Thank you so much for giving me this opportunity. Now, the second huge thank you, which is equally as big, is to you all. Because of your immense support of my first little pink box with Dalton, which launched last February in 2024, because of that, it's making today possible. You blew Dalton's minds with how quickly you sold out repeatedly my little pink box. And so what happened is in around, I would say late March, early April of 2024, they approached me and said, hey, Sharalee, we would love to collaborate with you on a lip product or a lip set. So put together some ideas of something that you would like to create, whether it's something we already have, you want to do some different colors. And I said, great, I am honored. That would be wonderful. I do love lip products. I said, of course, at some point, I would really love the opportunity to do an eyeshadow palette. That's always been my dream, but we'll start here with lips. So I sent them some initial ideas for my lip product ideas. And I feel like it was maybe a week or 2 later, I received an email from Francesca and she said, Sharalee, great news. We've decided to abandon the lip idea and we're going to do an eyeshadow palette. So with a smaller company, things have to move pretty fast because the timelines are pretty long. So in order to get things produced, you have to get them to the factory quickly for the next year. So the first order of business was they said, we need you to send us your top 9 favorite eyeshadows that you would want to include in this palette. And I thought, 9 shadows, only 9. When I had dreamed about doing an eyeshadow palette before, I always thought, oh, could I whittle it down to 12? I'd really like to do 15. 15 would be easier to get all my favorites in one palette, but when they said 9, that was quite a challenge. So I literally spent a weekend swatching almost every favorite color I had in various palettes, trying to come up with a cohesive collection of colors that not only would I enjoy and use on a daily basis, but that I thought would be beneficial to the masses. So I sent those colors over. Then the next order of business was what I wanted to call it, names of the shadows, and then to design the packaging, the outer box, the inner packaging. So literally, they allowed me to start from scratch and say, this is what I would love in an eyeshadow palette. So of course I shot for the moon, but then I said, you know, I also want to try and keep this affordable. And so they said, well, in order to do that, we're going to have to pull you back down to earth a little bit, and we're going to have to tweak a few things in order to get you the great quality eyeshadows you want and also keep the whole palette affordable. So that was in June. And then for the rest of the summer, pretty much, I was just kind of waiting, and they would kind of give me little updates here and there. And I thought, okay, now, am I going to get to test these shadows before? Am I going to get to make sure that the colors are right? And they said, no, our timelines have to be so fast, but don't worry, our production team is on it. And I have to tell you, they totally were. They sent back to the lab a couple times some of the shadows because they were not quite the right shades. So in October was the first time that I actually got to see the palette kind of together and combined, but it was still not quite finished. And so after that point, we changed out the sticker on the back, we reordered 2 of the shadows, and then it was done. And then we just had to wait. And so here we are, March 6th, and the palette is launching tomorrow, March 7th at 9 a.m. Eastern on the Dalton website, and I am just thrilled. So with all of that history, now let's get to the palette, and let me introduce you to my True Beauty eyeshadow palette. Oh, this is so exciting. So obviously the outer packaging is pink. Who of you are surprised that I wanted to stay with the color scheme that Dalton uses on so many of their products, pink and white? I love it. Let's not mess with that, right? I also love how they incorporated these little tiny daisies, and this lettering was specifically chosen just for this palette. So there's a lot of specific, unique things about this palette. Now, the meaning behind this title of the palette is something that just kind of came to me, I mean, very quickly overnight, the theme, the shadow names, and that was something that I hope to translate. I hope it translates here on my channel, but that beauty is not just skin deep. True beauty starts on the inside, but I fully believe that there is nothing wrong with enhancing our outer appearance as well to make us feel more confident and ready to meet each day. But true beauty definitely starts on the inside. And so I wanted to just have a reminder. Every day you pull this out and you go to do your eyeshadow, my hope is that it will prompt you to think about the things that we can do to make our inside more beautiful. And along with that is how I came up with the theme of the shadow names. So before we get to that, I'll show you the back of the palette has the ingredients, but it also has a special note from me, signed by me. I'm not going to read it here. I'm going to save that for you to get to read when you receive your palette. Now, let me open up this fresh one. I have a couple, of course, that I have been using on repeat. And what's so funny is I actually wore these eyeshadows in a few videos, and a few of you said, what is on your eyes? And I said, oh, oops, I can't tell. So some of you have seen these shadows before. So, all right, when you open up this box, what I appreciate, it's so well packaged. It has an inner carton, which helps keep the palette secure inside from moving around and shifting, because there are a couple of shimmer shades in here. You know I had to do it. So I wanted to make sure that the palette arrives to you all in one piece. So what does the actual palette look like? Drum roll, it is white with pink lettering, and the pink is a darker pink so that you don't have to hold it up to the right light to read what it says. So again, it has the same lettering as what we saw on the outer packaging. It's just the colors in reverse. So the color of this palette is white, but it has almost like a pearl finish. So it's not going to show fingerprints. Hallelujah. So it's not that shiny finish. But I wanted to go with something white. Initially, I wanted glitter finish and all that. That's where they said, Shirley, let's pull it back down to earth. We don't want this palette to cost $100. I said, okay. but I wanted a white palette because I really wanted the colors inside to stand out against the white background. So before we get to the inside, let's talk about the shadows. And this was also something that, you know, us mature ladies, I don't know about you, but I'm having to pull out those readers way too often. And I said, I want to be able to read the names of the shadows without my readers and without having to be in the perfect lighting. So we did a darker ink print here, and the names of the shadows are good, gentle, faithful, loving, joyful, kind, peaceful, patient, and temperate. And if any of you are familiar with Galatians, you may recognize those 9 characteristics. And traditionally, they are listed as nouns: joy, peace, patience, kindness, goodness, faithfulness. But as we were creating the palette, they said, you know, some of those names might be a little too long to fit in this tiny little space. And so that got me thinking, wait, another way to look at this is, instead of nouns, let's make them adjectives. And so I turned each one of those nouns into the adjective version, and we finished with temperate. And that one took a lot of deliberation because I'm like, self-control, what's another word for self-control? And so I thought temperate was a good description and was just something that I think all of us could use in so many areas of our lives. So those are the names of all the shadows. And now, without further ado, let's get to the inside. Drum roll. I feel like I need a drum roll here. Here are the colors of the palette. Now, hopefully the colors are translating here live, but I'm going to pop up on the screen some other pictures so that you can really see the true colors. I'm going to swatch each one of them, and I'll explain kind of my description of what the colors are. So as you may be able to tell, there are 3 shimmer shades and 6 mattes. And it was important to me to have more mattes than shimmers, but I had to have some shimmers, not only for inner corner highlight, but for lid shades. But I also wanted to have enough matte shades in here that you can create many looks with just the matte shades, if that's your preference. So let me walk you through now the swatches of each shade in here, and I'll give you my color description of each and how I like to wear them, why I chose them, etc. Okay, so starting off, we have the shade Good. And if you've been around my channel, you know a matte brow bone highlight shade is a must. And I can't tell you how many palettes I have that I have to pull out another eyeshadow palette for this one shade. And so I said, we're starting there. We're gonna have a matte cream shade. And I wanted it to be light enough that this would work if you have fair skin, but it would also not be so stark white that you would have to mix it with something else. But the other great thing about having a shadow like this is that you can mix it with the other mattes in the palette or under or over one of the shimmers to mute it down. So as we go through the palette, think of some of these other shades mixed with this cream shade, and that's going to give you a lighter version. So it's making these 9 shadows a lot more versatile. You know how I love to mix my colors. Had to do it. All right, the next shade, this one right here, this was another must have. And this is one of my favorite lid shades. It's what I'm wearing today. It's also one of my favorite inner corner shades. And again, something that I have struggled to find in so many other palettes, and that is a bright, shimmery, but smooth shimmer color that you can use on the inner corner. Just pop it in right there, put it all over the lid. This shimmer shade is so smooth and pigmented, and basically it just gives a really good look of shine, high shine, a metallic shine on the lid. And if you wear it over a cream shadow stick like I'm wearing here, or you wet it, you're gonna even get more metallic shine. But just all on its own, look how beautiful. And this has a hint of pink undertone to it. Now I do have another bright shimmer shade in here, but that one has a different tone. There's a story behind that one as well. But this was a must because, again, I wanted some versatility with different shimmer shades paired with the other mattes in the palette. All right, next up we have this one, which is Faithful. And I love that word, faithful. And when I saw this kind of mid-tone neutral brown shade, I thought, that is a faithful crease color. So I thought the name and the shade kind of suited each other so well. This was another one that really, I swatched literally almost every color like it in all of my shadows to come up with this perfect tone. Why is this perfect? To me, this is perfect because it is not too warm. It's also not too cool. I didn't want something that was gray taupe, but I also didn't want something that was so yellow that those of you with fair skin would have trouble using it as a crease color. So finding the perfect, what I think is the perfect neutral brown tone to just buff through the crease as a very quick look. I mean, talk about quick look. This with your matte shade on the lid, this in the crease, and you're out the door. I mean, super fast options in this palette. And by the way, you can bet that there are going to be lots of tutorials coming. I've already filmed 3 short reels for each of the looks that you'll find on the Dalton website, including this one. So those are going to be coming. Make sure you're following. All right, let's keep going. All right, this next shade right here is called Loving. And it's just a shade that I have been loving in several different palettes. There have been similar shades and I love it. Why do I love it? Why is it different? How is it different than this one? This one has more of a rose gold undertone rather than straight up pink. This one has a little more gold and kind of peachiness to it. So what is so funny is originally when we did this palette, we put those 2 shades side by side because I like to have a palette that's in a color gradation. And so here is my first sample palette, and you can see I've hit pan on this one. I have used this palette. And when I tell you I reach for this as often as I can, I mean, I reach for it as often as I can. And initially, these 2 were side by side. And the production team said, you know, they look in the pan so similar that people might think you have 2 duplicate shadows. They're like, when you swatch them, they're totally different, but we don't want people to think that, you know, you've got 2 shadows that are basically the same. I said, okay. So we moved that shimmer shade over here, and I think it was wise to do it. And so again, that shade right here, this Loving shade, which of course I've swatched over my knuckle. You're gonna get better swatches at the end of this. I'll pop up on the screen the finished swatches, but you can see there's just more of a peach undertone rather than this silvery pink. And believe it or not, those do show up so differently on the eyes. And depending on what other colors I'm pairing those shades with in the palette, depends on which one I choose. So this, again, is a color that I just find so easy to just throw all over the lid and pop either this or this in the crease or any combination of that. And you have just a nice warm shimmer shade. But I wanted something that wasn't yellow gold. I find that so many palettes right now have that really warm gold, which is really hard to wear. And I personally kind of seem to gravitate away from those. So this is a shade that I think you'll find universally flattering. Next to it is a pinkish shade. I say ish because I'll show you it has some coral leanings. And this one is Joyful. And I just think that is a perfect description of that color. It just makes me happy and joyful. You know how much I love pink eyeshadows, but I had to be careful. Again, thinking about the masses. What would the masses be happy with? Because I know so many of you are like, oh no, I'm not wearing pink shadow. So this one, you can see it has enough peach tones. It's more of a corally pink. Again, it's a matte. And I have found this to be so versatile. One of the matte looks on the website, which I'll be doing a reel for, I've mixed this with the brown shade and you get almost like a fall color. And so I love that about this shade. It does not come off as brown. It doesn't come off as orange. It has the pink and the peach together. And I just have loved this shade. It just warms up the crease. And having several crease options in this palette was also very important for me. So 9 shades, how do we accomplish that? Well, we've got the brown, we have this beautiful corally peach, which again, you can mix with the brown, but you can also mix it with the cream shade and lighten it even more. You can see how beautiful it pairs with the shimmer shade right above it. And then we have another shade right here, which is Kind. And this shade, again, was one that I swatched almost every pinky toned shadow in my entire collection, trying to find the perfect tone, and I think I did. So again, I wanted something that would not translate to pastel-y, because that is a difficult pink for those with medium to deeper skin tones, but it also is just a difficult tone to wear in general, to come across as a neutral. So I wanted a cooler leaning pink that would work on my warm skin tones, but that would also work for those of you with fair skin tones. I didn't want something that would go orange. If you have more pink undertones, I wanted something that would truly read as a cool tone pink. And I think this did it. This fits the bill. This is what I have in my crease and outer corner here. And I love this shade. And again, what my thought was with the shimmer shades is I really love pairing this shade with this shimmer because it has those kind of cooler pink tones and it just kind of helps keep the look overall cool. So we've got 3 great crease shades. We've got a brow bone highlight shade. We've got 2 great lid shades, shimmer shades, but now we need some depth and a fun shade. So let's go next to this one. And when I was trying to sort out what shade to call what, I looked at this and I thought peaceful. And this is a peaceful green. So what I love about this shade, and I was trying to think of a good description, I would call this almost like a spruce. Not quite blue, not quite green, not quite gray, not quite taupe, but it has all of those kind of properties in there. And depending on if you wear it dry or wet, and I do have a reel already loaded where I am wearing this shade all over my lid and I wet it, and the wetness, that really brings out more of this kind of like springy green color. But you can see it has this silvery kind of taupey tone to it, a hint of green. So I wanted something that had some color, but that wasn't like vibrant blue. That wasn't a shade that you would never use. So I hope that many of you will take the plunge and actually try a look with this shade because I think it is so beautiful. And it can be a little more for a dramatic look, but that's what I wanted. I wanted this palette to not just be great for daytime looks, but also to be what you need when you have a glam night out, you have a special event, you can just have some fun and play with different colors in the palette. So there is peaceful. And then we needed some depth. And this was tough for me because again, only 9 shadows. Do we add another shimmer? Do we add another crease color? I really was thinking about a purple shade because you know I love purple. I love my purples and my pinks. But instead, I went with these 2 shades and I'll explain. So this one right here is Patient. And I think that this will be an easy name to remember because with deep colors like this, and this is super pigmented, you want to be patient when you work with this shade. Just build it slowly, otherwise it can overtake your look. So I have this just blended in the very outer corner today, and I love it. I've also worn it with the green shade, built up a little more intensely. You could do a full-on smoky look with this shade. But as you can see there, Again, another shade that was a little tricky. I did not want a matte black shade. Now, some might disagree with that decision, but for me, I don't use the matte black in most of my palettes very often because as I've gotten older, I just feel like a matte black shade really gets out of control fast and is just a little too harsh. But I also love and appreciate kind of a cooler, dark tone other than brown. And I feel like all of us have palettes that have oodles and oodles of dark brown shadows, and I wanted to give you something different. But when it comes to grays, the trick for me with a gray tone shadow is I don't want it to look blue. And that is also tricky because we're adding white to black to create this gray shade. And if you add too much white to it, it can start looking blue, right? So this gray is just perfect. It is a warm gray tone. Kind of reminds me of how I chose my wall color. I wanted something that would go with warm tones, but would also look great with cool tones. So this shade will work with any of the other shades in the palette. So this charcoal gray is just amazing, either as a liner, just to slightly darken the outer corner, or you can go full on all the way across the lash line and go full glam. All right, let's get to the final shade in the palette. Now, as I told you, I wanted something different than just dark brown. And if you haven't had many eyeshadow palettes, if you're new to makeup, you might not think of brown as being that different from one palette to the next. But I'm telling you, there is yellow brown, there's orange brown, there's cool gray browns, there's all kinds of browns out there. But I wanted something just a little different. And I decided on this shade right here because I wasn't going to be doing a purple or a plum. I wanted something that incorporated the plum into the brown, and I chose this shade, and this last shade is Temperate. And so as I said, when I was telling you the names, I thought that was an appropriate name for this shade, just to be a reminder of going in with some control, self-control in so many areas, what we're speaking, what our actions are, and even with eyeshadow. This dark matte shade though is just, it's my favorite brown, my favorite dark brown. And you're saying, well, Shirley, that's a little plummy purpley brown, cranberry purpley brown. It is, and that's why I love it, because it's not a traditional brown. I feel like this just does wonders when mixed with any of these shades. In particular, I love it with these 6 shades. It will work also with this because it does have those slightly cooler undertones, but my favorite is to incorporate it with any of these shades, and it works great. So if you mix either one of these actually with the kind shade, you actually get a little bit of a purpley tone on the eyes. So all in all, I thought that these 2 shades are very different. They can really take your eye look one way or the other, but they are both deep enough. You can wear them as liner shadow. And by the way, the mineral pigments that they used in these shadows really enhance the color payoff on these shadows. You do not have to work hard to build these shadows up. Now, in talking about the formula, these shadows, when you put your finger in, they are soft and yet pigmented. And if you've ever tried any burgundy or reddish tone shadows or even pink tone shadows in other palettes, you'll know that it's really difficult to get not only the color payoff, but a smooth feel to them without using ingredients like carmine or even color dyes like the red 27, 28. That is why companies revert to using those types of ingredients, because it's really hard to get a smooth formulation that actually gives you that true color payoff. And Dalton, I am so happy to just see this formulation that they worked with their lab to create. These 9 shadows are talc-free. They are mineral-based pigments, which gives them intense color payoff. They are also cruelty-free, and as with all of the other Dalton ingredients, they are formulated without over 1,300 known toxic ingredients. So these are safe to use on the eyes and just an amazing clean formula that is talc free. And talc is another ingredient that is very prominent in most eyeshadows to give them that slippery texture. And so the way that Dalton was able to come up with this formulation and not have to put that in, I'm just amazed. Now, because they are a softer shadow, I'm gonna give you this little tip. Make sure you tap off your brush on the edge of the palette before you go in and put it on your eyes. Same with the shimmer shades. You're gonna wanna put your brush in and tap off like that and then blend. Just trust me on this. You'll be a happy camper if you do that. And you will get a little bit of fallout from the shimmer shades if you're not good about tapping off. So just tap your brush off lightly, then go in, and you will be shocked and amazed at how quickly the pigment builds up. And again, the colors just stay true to what they are in the palette. So I am just amazed and in awe of what Dalton was able to pull together. And I'm throwing out all these ideas and they were able just to combine all of my dreams and put them into this palette and present them to you. So again, this launches tomorrow. The price on this palette is $39. Today, you can go over to their website and sign up if you've not already done so to be notified as soon as this goes live. So join the wait list. I'll leave that link down below. I will also leave my discount code and all of the information about this palette, the link and everything. So again, just a huge heartfelt thank you to Dalton, the entire team. Thank you so much for allowing me and trusting me to create this product that not only has my name on it, but that has your name on it. That is so humbling to me that a company would trust me with creating a product for them. So thank you, Dalton. You have been a dream to work with, and I hope that maybe in the future we can do another project together. Thank you also again to each one of you for being here, for supporting my channel through all of the years, and for making this palette dream a reality.